hello, hi, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. Welcome to Actual Tech Media's EcoCast. Today's topic is supporting, improving, and securing finance IT and cloud environments. My name is Jess Steinbach with Actual Tech Media. I am thrilled to be your moderator for this interesting conversation today. And I have to say, I absolutely love EcoCast. I love that in these kinds of discussions, we get to bring together a community with specific needs and common interests. You are all here today to talk about technology innovations within the financial world. And let's be real about that. Your needs are unique and specific and incredibly important. And as we wrap up the year, which I know is just insane, I still haven't let that sunk in yet, it is a great time to look at the risks, but also to get excited about the opportunities that are in front of us. So today, we're going to explore all of the trends, solutions, and strategies that will help you avoid those risks and take advantage of those opportunities as we head into 2023. Now, to guide us through this conversation today, we're going to hear from top experts at Zerto, Rubrik, Ping Identity, Sios, and Snyk. There is a lot to cover here. I can't wait to get started. So let's zip on through our introductory housekeeping information and get this show on the road. All right. Now, in order for you to get the most out of your day today, we're going to review a few important things on your webinar console, so follow along with me on this guided tour. Now, first up, we do have some awesome prizes lined up for you. I'm going to come back to those in just a moment, but first, I want to draw your attention on over to the questions box in your webinar control panel. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a big audience of your peers and colleagues out there in the financial world today, so reach out and give a virtual wave to them. I'm seeing some really great feedback and comments coming in. I love that. Scott, I saw, is very excited. Deb, I saw, very excited. I'm loving all the energy that you guys are bringing today. So thank you so much for that. Now, the questions tab is also a great place to reach out to the Actual Tech Media crew. So if you are having any tech issues today, please do let us know. I do want to remind you that a browser refresh is going to clear out just about any of the usual glitches in the matrix there. But if that doesn't work, you can shoot us a message and we will be happy to help you out. Now, we want this to be an informative webinar for you, which means that we want to see those technical questions. I saw some great question askers already in the crew today, and I love that. So if you're a long-time question asker or a first-time question asker, today's a great day to get those in. We hope that you will get engaged, give us comments, give us questions, give us tips, discussion points, whatever it is. We want to see that coming in. So please do finish your coffee, stretch out your fingers, and get ready to jump into the conversation there. Now, not only are we going to have team members responding to you during the live EcoCast today, we will also have dedicated Q&A sessions throughout the day. And if we do not get to your question during our live webinar today, do not worry, because the awesome humans from Zerto, Rubrik, Ping Identity, Sios, and Snyk will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, now the next thing I want to point out on your audience console there is that Twitter button. So today on the EcoCast, if you hear something kind of fun and brain tickly and it lights your brain up a little bit and you want to share that with your friends, you can use that Twitter button right there on your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast is going to be automatically added to your post. All right, now the last thing I want to point out in your webinar console is that audience tab. It's right there next to the questions tab where we kind of started our tour today. You're going to find some fantastic resources and takeaways from our speakers here. We've got just an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So click around in that handout section and download and save some of those awesome resources for later. Now, I mentioned it at the top here, but my name is Jess Steinbach, if we haven't met before. I'm with Actual Tech Media. I'm very happy to be one of your moderators on this EcoCast. We're also going to be joined, as you can see, by the wonderful David Davis, who will be here in just a moment for our keynote. And Scott Becker's hanging out with us today on live chat. So we have the whole awesome crew with us here today. And if that wasn't enough good news for you, I told you I'd come back to those prizes, so here we are. We also have 3 $500 Amazon gift cards that we will be giving away to 3 lucky winners here today. Now, as a reminder, you do need to be here in attendance during the live webinar in order to qualify for these prizes, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you're not sure what those prize terms and conditions are, fair enough, head on over to that handouts tab that we were just talking about, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you will find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Okay, now I mentioned a little bit earlier how much we love getting those questions in from you all, and we really mean that. So we have an extra incentive for you to really loosen up those insightful questions and get them rolling in. So we will be looking at all of the questions asked in every session today. Every session, whether or not we get to your question in a live Q&A, we'll be reviewing after we wrap. We will choose the best question asked. I know the competition is fierce. It's always tough to choose that, but we will do our best to choose that best question, and we will be sending them a $50 Amazon gift card as a thank you for that insightful and engaging interaction. So please do get those questions in because it's great and it brings up the whole energy of the EcoCast, and also you could be qualified and entered to win that $50 Amazon gift card. I'm going to throw up a few reminders here on the screen for you, including the fact that all grand prize winners are required to submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. Okay, now if you are a lucky winner here today at the EcoCast, you do always have the option to donate the value of your prize to one of the selected charities you see here. Thanks to generous prize winners on previous Actual Tech Media webinars, thousands of dollars have been donated to these wonderful organizations. So if you are a winner and you would like to get involved, please do let us know. We'd be very happy to help make that happen. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're pretty excited to have you here with us live today. We want to keep that good feeling going, so connect with us on social media. Find us on Twitter and on Facebook. I'm also going to highly recommend, I say this every week, I hope you're all taking me up on it, go check out the Actual Tech Media YouTube channel. We have got on-demand webinars on just about any topic you can imagine. So if something lights you up today and you want to dig in a little further, head on over to this YouTube channel and start exploring some of those webinars. Now, you can also head over to LinkedIn, connect with us there. We've got lots of content, and you can find the team and ask any questions. So definitely make sure that you follow up with us on LinkedIn. Now, if you're still looking for some great content, I have one more suggestion for you. We're heading into good hibernating and reading season here as it gets colder and colder for a lot of us. So why don't you check out the Actual Tech Media Guerrilla Guide Book Club. In this book club, you're going to get access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts. So this way you get to stay up to date on all the trending enterprise technology. These books are going to work on your Kindle, on your mobile device, so you can take them with you if you're flying around this holiday season. They're very transportable, and they are all completely free. So make sure you go check out that book club. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide. There's also a link for you in that handy dandy handouts tab. So head on back over to that. And the very last thing I'm going to cover with us today, this is another great way to win a prize, also a great way to help grow our wonderful community out there. And that's to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you're going to find a link to do that, again, in your Handouts tab. Everything you need right there in that Handouts tab. You're also going to be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. Now, I do want to assure you that we are not going to spam your friends, your coworkers. I know that's always a bit weird to sign somebody up for, for getting lots of emails. We send them one email about upcoming webinars, and then we send them one little reminder, and that's it. So if they don't respond to that, they will be unsubscribed, and we will stop sending them emails, I promise. Then both you and your coworker could win a $300 Amazon gift card. We hold those drawings every month, so be sure to think of somebody awesome before you head out today and send them an invite. All right, folks. Well, we've covered a lot of information. Now, I need to take a deep breath, so we'll bring David Davis on here. He's going to come kick us off in style today. David's going to talk to us a little bit about 5 things that you should have in mind, 5 things to know about modernizing and securing FinServ IT. It is always a pleasure to start out an EcoCast with David, so I know that we are going to be off to a good start. David, I know you've got some great info to dig into with all of us today, so without any further ado, I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you. Take it away, David.
Thanks so much, Jess. I really appreciate that introduction. I'm excited to be here to chat with you about the 5 things to know about modernizing and securing FinServ IT, or financial services. So most of you on the event today are in some sort of financial services IT industry. And so maybe you know all of these things, maybe you know some of them, maybe you know none of them. But I hope to, in this short overview, really set the stage for today's topic around supporting, improving, and securing finance, IT, and cloud environments. And the first thing I want to talk about today is that financial services IT is unique. It's different than your standard IT organization out there. I mean, financial services are banks and investment companies, insurance agencies, real estate, tax planning, and there's a whole lot of regulation that goes into financial services industries. I mean, compliance is a huge issue in the financial services industry, more so than many other verticals out there, with the exception perhaps of healthcare. And so compliance always has to be top of mind in FinServ IT. Another differentiator, perhaps, in FinServ IT is that some financial organizations might not innovate as rapidly as other verticals. For example, mid-size and small banks are traditionally not as innovative as the newer startup fintech companies out there that are, pushing the innovation with apps and cloud services. So there's a broad range when it comes to innovation in the FinServ industry. And another differentiator I want to point out is that security is so much more critical in FinServ IT than in other industries. I mean, financial services companies deal with so much PII, or personally identifiable information, and personal financial data. I mean, you have people's credit histories, retirement portfolios, insurance data. Security is so critical because that data is highly targeted by malicious attackers out there. That data is so valuable. And that really brings me to my second point, not only of how prone to attack financial services companies are because of that rich PII and financial data, but they're also more prone to fraud, meaning not just fraud from, internal, let's say, employees who want to commit fraud, but also fraud from, potential clients or partners, or malicious phishing attackers from overseas, or business executive compromise attackers. All sorts of attackers are trying to get at this data. And so financial services companies have to be not only secure, but also prepared in the event of data loss or data compromise. But how can you protect and ensure compliance and ensure rapid recovery for data if you don't have visibility to that data? So you have to know what you have. Visibility is key. And like with the iceberg here, in most cases, you're just scratching the surface when you think you know what you have, because you need visibility to that personally identifiable information. If there is a compromise, you need to know exactly what was compromised, and you need to be able to rapidly get that data back and ensure that your compliance requirements are always met. Speaking of compliance, that brings me to point number 4. I mean, I've said numerous times that compliance is a must, but compliance in some cases can be kind of a gray area. And you really need to have a broad ecosystem of solutions in place. Security monitoring, security prevention, identity, performance monitoring, troubleshooting, data recovery, data visibility, and more cloud-based disaster recovery as a service and SaaS-based solutions are stepping in here to fill the compliance void, which is always a challenge to find the right solutions for a compliance ecosystem requirement in the FinServ industry. And that brings me to my final point that, you've got to just keep looking for more innovative solutions to help meet your unique challenges in the FinServ industry. And when you find these solutions, ask how these solutions have helped other FinServ companies. Look for case studies, ask for customer references. And I encourage you, of course, to try to get your own personal demos of these solutions so that you can ask questions about your specific use cases and your specific challenges. All right, so with that, we've reached the end of my list of the top 5 things to know about modernizing and securing FinServ IT. I hope that you enjoy today's EcoCast, and I encourage you to do whatever you can do to better support, improve, and secure your financial IT and cloud environments in the FinServ industry. It's going to be a great EcoCast. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Jess.
Well, thanks, David, and thank you so much for being here to kick off our EcoCast. I don't know about you folks, but I thought that was just a great way to kind of introduce our conversation today and get things rolling. Now, we have a question for all of you out there. What we're wondering about is, what is your timeline for making some of the changes that we're going to hear about today? So we're going to dig into some really interesting solutions, get some cool ideas kind of rolling, and we're curious what you have in mind. Are you thinking, days and weeks? Are you thinking months? Are you thinking years? Or maybe not really certain? And right now what I'm seeing, kind of the runaway results are almost half of you are saying you're not sure. And that's great. That means that there's still a lot of open conversation. You're kind of in those research phases. So don't worry if you're in that not sure group. That is not a bad place to be. The next size group I'm seeing is that 6 to 12 months. So I love that. I think, we're all in that phase right now where we're thinking about the 2023 approaching and what do we need to have in place in the next 6 months to really take advantage and hit the ground running coming into this new year here. Well, and speaking of which, I think it's time that we jump into some of these exciting presentations to help you get ready for that transition into the new year and really get into some of the solutions that we're going to learn about today. So let's go to our first presentation. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce you today to Mike Nassas, Product Marketing Manager at Zerto. Mike, I'm so glad you could be here with us to kick us off. You're our first and grand start to the day, so I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And just a quick mic check. Everybody, you can hear me okay? I sound
I
fine?
Gotcha. Mike, I got you, Mike.
All right. Sounds good. So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Nassas. I'm a product marketing manager at Zerto, and today I'm going to kind of take you through the next 15 minutes or so to kind of talk to you about how Zerto can help deliver a continuous availability for your financial organization, and really why other organizations just like yours trust Zerto with the most critical of digital assets. So the financial services industry has seen sweeping technology-led changes over the past 3 to 5 years or so. IT departments are constantly tasked with improving efficiency and facilitating innovation, and many of them are utilizing newer technologies like AI, blockchain, fintech, and even like using the public cloud more and more to scale. So as a result of all of this, right, an explosion of data has occurred, and the need to protect that data has become of utmost importance. So when we talk to our financial services customers, there's really 3 challenges that are top of mind for them. The first challenge, and this is probably not a surprise to any of you, is with the continued and unfortunately growing threat of ransomware, which has become a C-level priority for all of the financial organizations that we speak to, right? On average, it costs $1.6 million to remediate an attack, and that was a 2021 figure. So this is, a pretty hefty amount. So you really, ransomware has really been top of mind. Secondly, of course, to succeed in today's world, especially in today's digital world, there's really no tolerance for downtime from any disruption, whether that's natural disaster, ransomware attack, or human error, or even a planned disruption, like an IT migration. And actually, over half of financial services organizations were actually hit by a ransomware attack last year, which is up from 34% the year before. So an over 20% increase in ransomware attacks of financial services organization year over year. So that's huge, and that's critical, right? And protecting that is vital. And lastly, the acceleration of cloud adoption, right, hybrid and multi-cloud, has really introduced new complexities for IT. Cloud spending has been through the roof. It was over $300 billion last year, and the cloud footprint is only expected to grow even more to over 100 zettabytes over the next three to 4 years. So organizations are really challenged with migrating to the cloud and getting the most out of their cloud investment, and ensuring that cloud strategy accounts for the threats of things like ransomware and other disruptions, right? And actually, almost 60% of financial services organizations actually cite migrating workloads as a top challenge. So all three of these challenges, we can address, and just keep these in mind, and you'll kind of see as the presentation goes on how we can address all of these. And then just to not to harp on it too much, but again, ransomware, that has become kind of a very key initiative for IT departments, and something that we really need to protect against because of the rise of it and the cost of it, right? And actually 52% or over half of financial services organizations actually paid out that ransom payment last year, which was actually over double the rate from 2020. So it's becoming pretty crazy out there with ransomware. And actually, unfortunately, even the ones that paid that payment, only 10% of financial services organizations got all of that encrypted data back after an attack. So, sometimes even if you pay it, more than likely you're probably not going to be able to get most of your data, or all of your data back, excuse me. So just a couple things to think about. So of course, financial services organizations, they rely on timely, correct, and protected information to best serve your clients. So any downtime or data loss can really have huge, devastating, and costly effects. And this is where Zerto really shines. So we're focused on three key use cases with our solution: ransomware resilience, disaster recovery, and multi-cloud mobility, right? So we can, with ransomware, we can resume in minutes to seconds before an attack and whether it's a ransomware attack or a natural disaster, we have industry-leading RTOs and RPOs, which we'll get into in a little bit. And of course, we also allow for the freedom to innovate across clouds and help you migrate those workloads much more easily. So we're really focused on these three use cases to ensure that all of our customers really can achieve what we call continuous data protection for any app or cloud or threat. And this continuous data protection, or what we call CDP, has really been the foundation of our solution, and something that we actually pioneered back about 13 years ago when we started Zerto. So what is CDP? CDP is really, first and foremost, it's made possible with our block level replication. So this is near synchronous replication, which is the best of both worlds. It's less costly than synchronous replication, and at the same time, there's no performance impact like asynchronous with snapshots, right? So you don't have to fiddle around with snapshots and backup windows and also take a hit on your performance. And also, because we sit at the hypervisor level, we can actually be hardware and storage agnostic. So we're a software-only solution, and we don't really care what hardware or storage that you have. We will work with it, and it's something that is very simple to set up and replicate, and again, it stays always on to keep you always protected. So let's kind of get into the details of how that works, right? So part of what makes CDP so powerful is the unique journaling capabilities that we have. So I mentioned earlier about the industry-leading RPOs of seconds and RTOs of minutes. So this is kind of where this comes in, right? So the Zerto journal tracks every single change made in your application or on your server, and it logs these as checkpoints every 5 or 10 seconds, right? So if you get hit with a ransomware attack, for example, at 10 a.m. on the dot, it's actually very easy to roll back to 9:59 and 55 seconds and completely mitigate that infection. So you're able to recover in minutes to seconds before an attack or disruption, and really neutralize, those ransomware threats that we just spoke about. Now, to solve for the challenge of recovering complex enterprise apps, you really need to protect your VMs as one cohesive unit, right? So that way you kind of avoid that inconsistent recovery of applications where each VM is being restored to a different point in time. So How we do it is we have a very app-centric recovery approach, which protects and recovers at a very granular level in the same state that you left off on for all of your apps. So this way, this saves a ton of resources when you're trying to reduce the amount of time dedicated to recovery, as all of those apps will be recovered as a single entity and will be in the same state and time that you left off on for them. So no staggered backup windows or time wasting with recovery. Now, when it comes to whether on-premise or in the cloud, we have the implementation and deployment is seamless and fast, and really allows you to integrate with your existing tech stack, to make really that ongoing management process very easy, right? So the orchestration that's built in and the manual processes that are automated allows you to actually test whenever you'd like without any disruption, right? Even during business hours. So really our customers really say that Zerto gives them that confidence in recovery in the event of a disruption happens, because they're able to do that failover testing that's non-disruptive beforehand in case something does go wrong. They have that peace of mind and that confidence. And really finally, the Zerto Analytics tool provides that full visibility and reporting across your sites and ensures that full compliance to meet any regulatory needs that you might have, any financial services. That's always huge, and really help to provide more intelligent infrastructure planning as well. Now, whether unplanned or planned, the challenge for financial services IT organizations, IT divisions, is really to stay protected enough to efficiently handle the reactive nature of an unplanned disruption, but at the same time being nimble enough to innovate through proactive disruptions that deliver business values, right? Like a migration. So whether that disruption you encounter is unplanned, like a ransomware attack, a natural disaster, or even a user error, or your disruption is planned, like some sort of IT initiative, handling these outages really needs to be simple, automated, and really able to cover 100% of business requirements while minimizing the resources and manual processes that are needed. So ultimately, Zerto actually harnesses all of the technical benefits we've been talking about to kind of deliver on these real-world use cases like these. So you're up and running in minutes with really very, very little to no data loss. So that's kind of where we fit in. Whether it's planned or unplanned, we have a solution for that. And on top of it, these disruptions that I just mentioned also occur inside SaaS apps and next-gen apps. So Zerto really has the ability to provide data protection for not only Kubernetes native workloads, but also SaaS workloads as well. So it's not just for ransomware, it's for all types of outages and disruptions. Now, some real-world customers that we serve in your industry and financial services, I'm obviously not going to name all of these, but you can see them on the screen. They're some of the largest, well-known that in the industry. So, we cover the gamut. We have small, we have larger, medium, larger financial services customers that rely on us to protect their data in the event of an outage. And actually, one recent one is actually a smaller business, a community credit union. They're based out of southeastern Washington State, Vancouver area. They're called Hapo Credit Union. So they have over 300 employees that provide services for more than 100,000 members, right? So they're a decent sized credit union, and they have several locations, and of course, online banking features, and kind of the full suite of financial services, right? So before Zerto, they were using an array-based solution. They were replicating once per day or hour, depending on the importance of that application, which was really impacting their RPOs and their RTOs. They had 1 gigabyte in bandwidth and were still limited in terms of how often they could replicate that data. So this was, of course, especially concerning because their lending software that they use constantly updated through the day. So they were introduced to Zerto, and they decided to implement it, right? With Zerto, they replicated exactly what they needed. The VMs supporting a specific application. This ensured that they were not releasing storage by replicating white space, and it resulted in 43% of storage savings, and eliminated the need for them to purchase additional storage, which they were going to do, which of course saved them a ton of money as well. On top of all that, this near real-time replication minimized that data loss and ensured that fast, easy access to all of their applications and data. And we actually were able to match the performance of their physical environment while providing a consistent service level agreement as well. So they were happy their applications and data could be back online in 5 minutes or less. And on top of all that, as I mentioned earlier, they always take advantage of the simple failover testing. It's one-click testing that's non-disruptive that they love and that they can do at any time during business hours. So they can, of course, have that peace of mind. And I usually don't, present. I usually don't add a customer quote when I present, but I thought this one was so great that this was actually this credit union senior network administrator. I think it really just kind of speaks to how much he loves Zerto, how much it's really helped him. He basically said it's become one of their most important purchases that they've made recently. He never thought that the SLAs that they're delivering would be possible, and this one is the best. It really helps me sleep at night. That's something that we've actually heard often from lots of our customers. Again, that peace of mind knowing that that whatever happens, you'll be covered. So I thought this was just a kind of a neat quote to share with everybody. Now, we invite you to kind of experience what Zerto has to offer firsthand with tons of different resources and tools at your disposal, right? There's a live demo that we can tailor to your organization's specific needs. There's hands-on labs that really allow you to test drive Zerto from your home or office, right? Things like a total cost of ownership calculator, and of course, tons of real customer reviews of our solution, and there's also a link in the chat to our financial services website section of our website. So lots of different things for you guys to kind of test Zerto firsthand before obviously making a decision.
Okay, Mike, thank you so much for that awesome presentation. I am actually going to, I'm going to flip us forward to this poll question here before we jump into some Q&A, because what we want to know from all of you out there is, we just heard this really interesting presentation. Obviously, Mike's just scratching the surface of everything that you can do with Zerto. So if you're looking to learn a little bit more, what is going to be the most helpful next step for you? Are you most interested in some data sheets or a demo? Are you already a customer? That's always a great option. Do you want to talk about some more case studies? So whatever would be helpful for you. And I promise you that if you take a little time now and select one of these answers on the poll, you're going to thank yourself for it later, because you just learned a bunch of stuff and it's going to sit and stay, and then you're going to go have coffee and you're going to lose some of it. So sign up right now, and Zerto will follow up and make sure that you get that information, you get that reminder. So take a second now and fill out that poll question. While you're doing that, Mike, thank you again for that presentation. And I understand we also have Andrew here with us today. Hey, Andrew.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great. Always glad to have you on an EcoCast. And you guys ready to jump into some Q&A now?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do it. All right. Well, I want to start with this one here from Patrick, who has clearly instantly did his homework and was looking through your handout. He says that he says, I see in your handout that you say to keep multiple copies across multiple sites. And what he's wondering, and I think there's some folks out there that might resonate, is for different size companies. So in his case, he says for a small company, if you've got one site, how can they accomplish that? Everything is in the cloud and backup is cloud to cloud. So he says, are we okay?
Yeah, so Zerto has the ability to do what's called one-to-many replication. So whether you're on-premise or in the cloud, you have the ability to replicate your data for whatever your source is to multiple targets, whether that's from, I know for this question, he's in cloud, but you have the ability to diversify. You have the ability to replicate to other cloud providers, right? Because, I mean, I'm sure everybody's experienced some Office 365 outage or some other cloud outage that has impacted maybe some of the services that you consume on a daily basis. So it's not, I think, is many places is reasonable for your organization to have copies of your data. I think is always better. It's never a bad thing to have redundant copies, more redundant copies. I think it's more of just a what the organization is comfortable with as far as how many copies they're willing to have versus cost. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And actually, on the good transition, on the note of comfort, we did get a question here from Pete that I think is worth kind of digging into. It might be bigger than we have time for today, but if somebody out there is dealing with a leadership team that maybe has some questions or concerns about, third-party vendors and security, what would you say on behalf of Zerto in that regard?
Yeah, so I know that there's many different as-a-service companies out there, right? So Zerto is not inherently a software as a service company. You can maintain and control your own data. You have the choice of where you want your organization's data to be protected to. So you really have the control to be able to do that with the Zerto software. So there isn't some abstracted management plane where all of your organization's data is flowing to first, and then that Zerto manages then to a target location, right? So we don't do any of that. So you're in full control of that, and we're happy to have a follow-up and go into more detail if you'd like.
That sounds great. We did get a question on that note in terms of setup. Is any hardware needed in order to run Zerto?
No, as Mike mentioned in the presentation, we're software only, so no hardware setup. It's for an on-premise deployment. It's extremely simple. It's a simple virtual appliance. It communicates with the hypervisor layer, and then you're able to then configure another site, and it's really simple to do. So no hardware deployment, no dependency. You can choose what hardware stack makes the most sense for your organization to either replicate to or whatever cloud you decide to replicate to as well. So very simple, easy deployment software.
I like simple and easy. Yeah, that's good. When VMs get restored, are they all different points in time?
No, so we use this concept of virtual protection groups. You can think of a virtual protection group as it's a mechanism where you can kind of group dependent applications together, and you can have the same point in time fidelity across all of those components that make up that application or set of VMs. So you can. We are keeping everything kind of in a application centric state. So there isn't going to, it's more of a crash consistency mechanism. So everything is going to be within that same point in time, crash consistent amongst all of your dependent components that you set up in your virtual protection groups.
Okay. Well, I have to say, Andrew, Mike, I wish we could keep going with the Q&A. We are getting pretty close to the end of our time here. So before you head out, for somebody out there that is really excited and wants to jump in with Zerto, what do you recommend as that first step?
Well, we have a few good resources. if you want to learn more, if you're more of a hands-on, we do have our hands-on labs. If you go to the Zerto website, and we also have, if you want to speak with something, if you want to do a demo, I would say go to the contact us page on Zerto or go to the hands-on lab section. We can spin up a hands-on lab for you so you can really get more of a deep dive and answer any other questions. So that's what I would recommend to do.
I love that. And you have, actually, there's a link in the handouts tab right now that will take everyone directly to the kind of Zerto platform specifically for financial service organizations. I was clicking around yesterday. There's some really interesting information, some really helpful resources. So I'll highly recommend that everyone goes and checks that out. Mike, Andrew, honestly, thank you so much. Always such a pleasure to chat with you both, and I think we've all learned a ton. There's still some questions that I know that we did not get to, so I am going to make sure that we get those over to you guys so you can follow up with all the audience members out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. And yes, for all of you out there who asked a great question, I saw some really wonderful questions coming in. If we didn't get to it today, please do know that Zerto, Andrew, Mike will get all of those questions, so they will be able to follow up with you and make sure you get some answers. And thanks for all the positive. I saw some high fives. Deb is a big fan of the Zerto blog. So there's a fan club out there for Zerto already, and rightfully so. All right. Well, and thanks to everyone who took a moment there to fill out the poll. I love seeing that come in. Again, your future selves will thank you for that now. And speaking of exciting things, how about we get to our very first prize giveaway? So we have a $500 Amazon gift card. I'm going to give you a quick reminder that you do need to be here present live at the webinar in order to win. And our first lucky winner here with us today of a $500 Amazon gift card is Neil Gomez. Neil Gomez of New Jersey. Neil, congratulations. And as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap. Now, there are still 2 more chances to win a $500 Amazon gift card, plus that best question card from each session. And remember, even if we don't read your question out live, you are still entered to win. So keep those questions coming in. All right, well, I think it's about time that we keep rolling in our EcoCast here today because we have another awesome presenter in the wings with us. I am so excited to introduce you all to Mark Murphy, Senior Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Mark, thank you so much for being here with us today. I know that you have some great information to cover with us, so I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you. Take it away, Mark.
I am going to take you through what Rubrik is doing for the financial services industry. First, let's take a quick look at the agenda. It'll be an overview of requirements that we're seeing coming down from the business, what we see as required by the folks that are running the data protection within that industry. An intro to Rubrik, hey, what's Rubrik doing about these requirements, and get you through a demo. So from a requirements standpoint, here's what we see coming down. We see data management and data protection becoming more of a boardroom conversation than it was in the past. So regulations such as FINRA requirements, SEC 1784, coming up more often. Cybersecurity, of course, being in the news, being able to protect our privacy of our customers. And we're getting a lot of external pressure from our customers to protect the data, make sure that it's locked down and that the data is safe with our industry. What that means from a data protection standpoint is this. We're still dealing with a number of fragmented hardware and software issues in the field. So master servers, media servers, things like that, all tied together to protect our data. Even if we manage to take care of that, we still have a fairly complex backup process, meaning jobs tied to schedules, tied to Windows, these VMs at 6, these VMs at 7, and so forth, that we have to manage to protect the data. It's also difficult to test recovery, not just for the machines themselves, but to prove that we have a solid disaster recovery plan with our data protection strategy, that we have an immutable copy off-site that can't be affected, what we consider to be an air gap copy. Next, the big problem we're seeing is the backups themselves are not secure. So the #1 disaster recovery event now isn't a natural disaster, but rather is a ransomware attack. Ransomware variants are being written to go encrypt the data on your backups first, then on your file servers and application servers and so forth. And they do that just to make sure that we can't recover and that they get paid. What we need inside of this, and typically don't have, is a way of detecting ransomware as it's traversing our environment. How does your backup system even know that it's been hit? Also, from a reporting standpoint, how do we simplistically get a report to prove to our auditors that we're actually meeting these requirements? Lastly, what we're looking for and what we don't see a lot of are businesses that are cloud ready in financial services. So it's really a matter of getting our security standards and our protection standards ported to data in the cloud. And that seems to be our biggest shortcoming. So how do we get data running out there? How do we natively protect it? How do we test it out and so forth? So from a Rubrik standpoint, what Rubrik is out to do is modernize and simplify the backup and recovery process itself. So consolidate the hardware stack, get rid of all the single points of failure, get us into a realm where we've got a simplistic policy to go manage all this data without having to get particularly granular, let the system itself discover new virtual machines and databases and protect those for us. Lower the recovery time objective so we can get these machines up and running in a much faster fashion rather than having to wait for it to restore. Lower our recovery point objective so we're protecting more often throughout the day. And lastly, tie it into whatever broader frameworks we have from a service management standpoint. So we're not managing individual entities just like backup and recovery, but rather whatever the broader picture is, make sure that we're using our APIs to go tie in with that picture. Second is comply with the regulations. So give us a way to validate that these backups are actually good. So go make a bunch of machines appear so I can test against those without having to affect production. Make sure this backup system has a way to detect the ransomware and remediate from it quickly. Get that research project of trying to figure out what data was hit, when it was hit, and how quickly can I recover it down to a minimum. A big piece of what we're doing is around user access control and retention locks. So not only locking down the backups themselves, but really getting granular on how we allow access into Rubrik itself, being that it's really the last line of defense. And lastly, data governance and compliance, knowing what's inside of this data, who has access to it, where is the PII in my environment. And thirdly, enable cloud capabilities. Get the data out to the cloud in a very secure fashion, make sure it's encrypted, user access control is in place. Launch those VMs in the cloud. So be able to take a virtual machine and launch it in AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. Test our lift and shift. Protect VMs that are now natively running in the cloud. And make sure that it's cloud vendor agnostic. So if we need to shift from one place to another, that's a possibility. Just to give an example of a cyber resilience mandate called Appendix J. So things we're doing around this, some of their requirements are anomaly detection remediation. So being able to make sure that the data itself isn't able to be accessed from the outside. So Rubrik's file system cannot be mounted up by NFS or SMB and affected externally. Use machine learning to look at heuristics inside of these files to say, hey, not just the change rate is different than what we'd expect, but that the contents of the actual files in question have actually changed. Role-based access control and retention lock. So this is really given way into a bigger conversations around single sign-on, around multi-factor authentication, and more recently, a new acronym, TOTP, which is a time-based one-time password. So even if an attacker has our AD credentials, they still can't get into our backup and recovery system. An air-gapped architecture. So if we have a breach, making sure that we have a third off-site copy that's immutable and cannot be affected by that attacker. So originally you'd see solutions around this being, I'd go buy 3 of these hardware appliances, spread them out, and use scripting to bring them on and off the network. Well, with the availability of cloud and Rubrik's ability to get the data to the cloud as soon as the backup is done, we can lock that down using a separate set of credentials just to get a copy off-site. And lastly, give us a reporting framework. Just make reporting and auditing easy for us. So alert on these anomalies, give us a quick way to recover, give us a quick way to export the details of our activities for auditors. So that's the first part. So let me take you through a demo of Rubrik. So this is Rubrik's UI. All HTML5, it's all cluster-based architecture, so we can lose a node or drives inside of the cluster and it's still standing. It scales by adding more nodes to the cluster and life cycles by adding more nodes and then ejecting the old nodes. but it comes back with some things you'd expect. Backups, conversion is us taking a VM and turning it on the cloud. Archive is us copying data to the cloud. But all these are live links inside of the system itself. You'll see live mounts, so that's us taking a virtual machine or database and presenting it directly back to a hypervisor and launching it so I can run testing against it without affecting production. Data reduction, so compression and deduplication ratios, and just a list of objects. Virtual machines, databases, physical servers are in here, NAS shares, cloud native can be in here as well as service level agreements. And this is really the heart and soul of Rubrik. So the service level agreement says, how often do we back up any object, being a VM or database? How long do we keep it? How many dailies, how many monthlies, and so forth. And where does it go? Do we just keep a copy on-prem? Do we keep a copy in the cloud? And I'll take you through that in just a minute. And lastly, just capacity metrics, how much data is being stored here locally, how much has been archived outside of the cluster itself. And there are a number of dashboards in here, like compliance. So if I want a quick way to look at compliance, hey, have we met our SLAs as we've set them up? That's all in here as well. This can all be downloaded. This can all be sent to reporting as well. So let me take you through setting up an SLA. So we'll call this FinTech 1. And here's where we can come in and say, all right, I want to protect my VMs or databases or whatever we throw at it. So once a day for the first 30 days and say once a month for, we'll just pick 36 months, but you kind of get the idea. But you can also get a little more granular. You come in and say, hey, I want to back up every 4 hours for the first day. And we can enable things like continuous data protection. So if I want to roll a VM right back down to the second, that's actually possible inside of the SLA itself. You can control the snapshot window. What we'll find out in the field is most deployments of Rubrik are not actually setting the snapshot window, meaning we're just letting Rubrik make up its mind when it's going to back up those VMs and databases. There's an immense amount of throttling built into Rubrik, such as no more than 3 VMs per ESX server at any given time. What it makes it safe to do is say, hey, Rubrik, 1,000 VMs go, without affecting production. So that's the first tab. The second tab says, where does the data go? So replication would be a Rubrik to Rubrik replication where you say, hey, if we're keeping 3 days of backups, maybe I want to keep some number of days, say 50 days at the DR site. Likewise, we can set up an archive location. This can be and is oftentimes public cloud. So we'll set up a cloud archive target, for example. And here's where you come in and say, all right, we need to hold our backups for 3 years for audit purposes, but all my restores are coming from the first 30 days. So the design center of Rubrik isn't to go store 3 years of data, but rather give you a quick way to recover and index the data over the past, however many days you're performing a restore. So if you're performing restores from the last, say, 7 days, maybe we'll keep 14 inside of the cluster itself. We can also enable instant archive, which says as soon as a backup's done, don't wait for 14 days to kick it out of the cluster to the cloud, but as soon as backup's done, get that copy out to the cloud itself. That way you've got the most recent copy and it's air gapped and sitting in the cloud. But that's it. That's half the battle. We've now created a policy inside of Rubrik to say I'm going to back up every 4 hours and continuously. From there, we can go discover vSphere, Hyper-V, Acropolis, it's all in here. I can come in and pick a server or two and say you and you, go manage protection, and go apply it to my tech SLA. And if I mouse over it, you can get the geometry of how long we're going to keep it. And if I say next and finish, it would kick off. So it'll do a full backup once. From there on, it's incremental forever. So another note about Rubrik is it's no longer performing weekly fulls or reverse incrementals, things like that. It's actually just incremental forever. It's pulling just the change blocks for your databases and virtual machines and physical servers into Rubrik. So that's backups. From there, you can come in and start performing restores. So what you can do is use our global search to go search for a VM. You can see this is a Windows VM that I'm pulling up. Its SLA says it's backing up every 4 hours. It's archiving out to AWS. And how far back the backups go, you'll even have an activity log of all of the backups and so forth, any activities associated with that virtual machine for audit purposes. But from a restore perspective, all you have to do is on the calendar, pick a date and pick an action. So from here, I can recover files, for example, go explore the C drive and D drive, export it, go make a copy back in vSphere of this VM. But I also have mount and instant recover, and you can actually do this in bulk if you want to. You can say, hey, take this virtual machine and go make it appear over on an ESX cluster. So as part of our security offering, you can take, say, some number of dozens of these virtual machines, go make them appear back in ESX, assign them to an offline port group, and run security scans against them for backup validation. That way, you're not running security scans against your production VMs. Instant recover, so if we've blue screened after loading a patch, we can quickly get it back. It does the same sort of work, but actually shuts down the running VM and brings us up with the same name and IP address. You also have launch on cloud. So if we're connected to, in this case, AWS, I can take this VM. It'll actually go convert it into AWS AMI and launch it in the cloud for me. And likewise, everything inside of this is indexed. So if I were to say, show me Notepad, every time we ever saw the expression Notepad inside of this server, it'll show up on a list for restoration. So here we've got the list, notepad.exe. If I click that, you can see every time it ever saw a Notepad. And if you go back far enough, you might even see some that are living out in the cloud. But that doesn't affect the way we do a restore. Data that's sent to the cloud is deduped, compressed, and encrypted. And from there, I can restore it directly back over the top of my originals. So looking at a few other objects here, we can protect virtual machines, physical servers are in here, SQL databases, Oracle databases. Reporting is all built into Rubrik. So I can come in and get my audit reports. I can get very granular about what's being reported on. So if I need specific objects to be reported on, specific VMs in a particular time range, that's possible. And this can all be emailed to you every day. So your usual green is good, red is bad sort of reports. It's our lab, so you can see we have a number of failures you can report on. Make it fairly simplistic. So an accompanying offer to Rubrik is called Polaris. So Polaris is a software as a service site. So this runs natively in the cloud and takes information created by our backups. Originally, it was for multi-site management, so I could manage Rubrik deployments all over the planet. What we can now do is protect cloud-native assets. So if you start running a VM in, say, AWS or Azure, we can actually create an SLA out in Polaris and protect those VMs. So I can back them up, I can do file level recovery, I can restore them from one region to another. So fairly in-depth as it comes to data protection. Now, the interesting thing here is it doesn't egress any data. It keeps the data in the cloud and doesn't require any kind of persistent compute. It simply starts up Rubrik, protects that VM in the cloud, then shuts down. Likewise for Azure, likewise for AWS relational database systems, Microsoft 365. On top of that, we also have our machine learning built in. So the ability to come out here, have Rubrik create a baseline for the VMs that we're protecting. So you can see, hey, this is our normal basis. And then at this point, we'll run a ransomware simulator to go delete and create a bunch of files. So what it's done is said, hey, not only is that amount of activity abnormal for you, but based on heuristics, we now see that the files that have changed are now encrypted. Do you want to recover? So what it's doing for us is getting rid of the research project associated with ransomware. So I can say, oh, it's the file share directory, and you can get all the way down to the individual file if you're interested under that. But that's the directory of files. Those are 1,800 and some files that were changed. Give me the option of either downloading it so I can move it to a fresh server. I can overwrite the original, recover to a different folder on the same server. But essentially give me a way to quickly identify data that's been hit by ransomware and recover it. Also inside of Rubrik is our compliance and governance system, the ability to look at the backups because we're bringing it all to us on Rubrik, being able to open up that data, look for personally identifiable information. So if you have PCI or you're under, say, GDPR sort of requirements, we can actually come in here and actually look at those and set up analyzers. But what you get inside of that now is the ability to see where all of your PII actually lives. And you can drill down into these individual servers. So not only can I see where the data lives, I can see now who has access to it. So I can say, hey, this file share has access by these users. And is that what I expect or not expect? Do I expect the data to be here? So give me a simplistic way to go identify where this data actually lives. And actually interesting, one of the ways you can do that is everything that you're seeing here is just sending API commands back to Rubrik. Well, if Rubrik can do that, and our UI is just consuming our API, so can anything else, including ServiceNow. So if you want to go tie ServiceNow in with your Rubrik cluster, just to have it along with everything else tied into one place, that's actually possible. If you want to create or push user-directed restores of files or databases down to end users, that's actually possible within Rubrik as well. So to wrap up, from a demo standpoint, a couple things here, a couple of success stories I'd like to share with you. Grove Bank of Trust. They had difficulty in protecting some of the data, protecting, they had a relatively inefficient backup process, as I'm sure some of you are familiar with. But ultimately, they were able to drive down the recovery time objective, increase their compliance, being able to certify what was backed up and not backed up, really shorten their audit process. Likewise with Compare Financial, so the ability to meet their RTOs, their RPOs, bring some time savings to the IT team, so not having to spend so much time inside of the backup system itself, and provide self-service and restores to the database administrators. Well, thank you for all your time. That will be it for today. Please pass along any Q&A you have to us. Happy to dive deeper into security, into protection, into ransomware recovery. Anytime you like, just get with our local team. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Mark. What an awesome presentation, tons of great information. And I do want to point out for all of you out there that we have put that poll up again. What we're looking for is what additional information you would like to get about the Rubrik solution. So I'll keep reminding you of this today. This is a really great way to make your life easy. So if you are still kind of doing some research, you're exploring some different options, Rubrik has a lot of great solutions, a lot of really interesting things to learn more about. So if you would like to spend a little time learning about Rubrik, you can go and definitely explore the site a little bit, but why not click here on the poll and let Rubrik follow up with you, let them put the information right in your hands that you're looking for, and kind of get that conversation rolling that way. Nice and easy. Speaking of which, I do want to remind you all to head on over to the Handouts tab. You can download that really, really interesting technical white paper from Rubrik. It's called An Introduction to Rubrik Orchestrated Application Recovery. Definitely worth a read, so be sure to download that now and save that for later. Now, I do wish we could take a little time and dig into some Q&A. Unfortunately, we wanted to go a little bit longer with the demo and exploration today, so we're going to have to wrap it there. But I do want to remind you all that we make sure any questions asked, as Mark said, you can reach out to the team at any time, but we will also send all the questions asked to Mark and to the Rubrik team and make sure that they follow up with you and are able to get you some answers. So you will hear back from them, so keep those questions coming in. And I saw some great ones. Ambrose, I have to give you a high five because Ambrose asked, you guys can't see this, but he or they asked quite a few questions. So I have to give a big high five to Ambrose for a lot of curiosity, and you will definitely get some answers back from Rubrik. So keep those questions coming in, Ambrose, and all of you. Please do keep filling out that poll. And again, thank you to everyone who is participating in that. All right, well, on that note, we're going to keep moving with the excitement here today because we have another awesome presentation lined up for you all. I am so excited to introduce you all to the next presenter in today's EcoCast because a lot of you will recognize this name, and I know that you are just as pumped up as I am to hear from Aubrey Turner, Executive Advisor at Ping Identity. Aubrey, thank you so much for being here with us today. It is always such a pleasure to chat with you. I know that you've got a ton of great content to dig into with all of us today, so the platform is all yours. Aubrey, take it away.
My name is Aubrey Turner. I am an executive advisor at Ping Identity. Convenience and security are often at odds, and we know that they can result in friction. In today's session, I'm going to talk to you about a couple different kinds of friction. The friction that may be created from internal teams that are trying to build secure customer experiences, secure digital experiences, and how those internal friction may result in external friction that your customers may bear the brunt of. And really, again, my goal is that at the end of this, you can learn, or you will learn, how we can orchestrate the friction out of building secure digital experiences. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. So you're, like anything else, I should say, it helps to understand or have an understanding of the problem before you can create a solution. And understanding your digital journey helps you understand your customers along a couple different fronts. So really knowing who your customers are. They may start out as prospects and eventually browse your website, create an account through creating a profile and building a unified profile. So knowing who your customers are is very important. And then secondarily, knowing what services they can use. And ultimately, your customers are looking to consume a service or purchase something through your company. So knowing who your customers are allows your business to enhance their experience and tailor the digital interactions. And each of these points is a digital interaction. And along with that, improving the security by ensuring you know who you are engaging with or who you think you're engaging with. So these journeys are successful when you understand your customers, again, by knowing who they are and knowing what services they use. And at every step of the experience your customer sees, you're weaving identity into that journey along the way. So we see customer identity as foundational at every step of the customer journey. And this starts with detecting and monitoring user behavior the moment they hit your website or your mobile app, which allows you to remain vigilant for online fraud. And that's that detection piece. And then being able to verify who your customer is. You can't secure what you don't know. And from the start, being able to verify who your customers are to ensure, as part of the registration account creation process, that you have confidence in terms of who you are engaging with. Along with that, making it easy for customers to update their profile and keep their information up to date. And this can pay benefits and dividends in terms of creating, or really being able to personalize every digital interaction with your customer. And that's why this unified profile information is important, and making it easy for customers to keep their profiles up to date is vital to, again, having a positive business impact from customer experience. And then letting your customers access your digital properties without any unnecessary friction. This is very, very important from the login authentication piece. And then giving your customers access to only the information and services they need access to, as well as being able to honor their privacy, which may evolve over the course of their relationship with your brand. So customer identity is foundational at every step in the digital customer journey. And we know getting customer identity right is good for business. As the saying goes, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So leveraging customer identity to make a good first impression. make it smooth for your customers to browse your website, make it easy for them to register and create an account, make it ultimately easy for them to choose your brand over a competitor. That making that good first impression boost customer acquisition, well, really lowers abandonment and results in boosting customer acquisition. But once you've made that good first impression, equally important to keep them coming back. And through that, the rest of that journey, again, making it easier for them to update their profile, easy for them to use the service, and helping them or meeting your customer in terms of how they want to interact with your business, helping them to choose you over a competitor, creating seamless and secure login, for example, and digital application, digital interactions across your website, your application that are seamless. This will allow you to grow revenue, earn loyalty. We know customers that are more loyal spend more, so those all will impact the bottom line, and ultimately increasing customer lifetime value. So make a good first impression, and then keep them coming back. And customer identity is good for business, and we know it's a key part of these digital interactions. However, all of that is easier said than done. We know designing, building, and optimizing customer experience, the ones that drive business impact, there's never one service or capability. There's not a one and done type of scenario. Turning your customer experience vision into reality requires multiple integrations, typically multiple vendor applications and services across customer identity, as well as business and marketing services, and stitching and weaving these things together to create a cohesive user journey, as I said, is easier said than done. By the way, this needs to be secure, as well as kind of consistent multi-channel experience. We've all had those kind of scenarios or probably experienced something where we bought something online and gone to the brick and mortar, and it's like the two don't know that you're the same person, or vice versa. So creating that secure, consistent multi-channel experience is key. And across from a unknown customer to a known customer, from an online fraud mitigation perspective, being vigilant for that, leveraging personal identity to know who you're doing business with, leveraging risk to make multi-factor authentication easier for those customers that building that profile data to personalize experiences, and tying that to point of sale, loyalty, CRM, marketing technology, and business intelligence, as well as support pieces or how your customers gain support and interact with your support organization, stitching that all together and creating a cohesive, secure, consistent multi-channel experience we know can be a challenge, and like I said, is easier said than done. A few other pieces that I think are relevant to creating these consistent, secure digital journeys. We know these integrations can introduce complexity, thousands of lines of custom code, development time and costs, as well as coexistence with legacy systems can be near to impossible. So that's one of the challenges. We know that internal friction is a friction between teams that need to collaborate that can slow and halt the innovation or innovation processes. Innovation often requires experimentation to figure out the right mix of vendors and capabilities, and the security controls that provide that frictionless and secure experiences that ultimately drive engagement. So internal friction may be holding back innovation. Even things like being unable to perform A/B testing of different experiences to find the optimal experience that again drives the customer engagement. The internal friction may result in customer friction, and mitigating that is key, reducing the development time. We also know that we are consistently evolving the customer experience to make it smoother. Like I said, maybe it's adding risk to make MFA easier for customers that don't pose a high risk to your organization, minimizing in churn. So we know that the process of innovation and friction that is slowing it down may increase your time to market, and may prevent you from adding innovative new features and functionalities that, again, drive customer engagement and prevent you from also being competitive. So those are some of the key roadblocks that, again, adding new capabilities that could boost engagement. And we see some of those constraints as potentially holding back building that optimal customer digital experience that, again, drives engagement and is ultimately good for business. So how do we do this? How do you take the friction out of building customer experiences? How do you do that simultaneously? How do you drive the innovation that your business needs to increase digital demand, to increase digital demand and outpace competition? How do you reduce time to market by increasing efficiency, lowering infrastructure costs, reducing development resources? And ultimately, how do you secure and delight your customers? How do you not compromise between security and convenience for your customers and ultimately your business, and take the friction out of weaving identity so that you can help your internal teams deliver customer experiences that are seamless and frictionless? So we see that, as I said, customer identity being key to these digital experiences, and the Ping One cloud platform provides the necessary identity services that are key to securing everything, to weave everything together from, again, customer identity to business applications and business services. You need orchestration capabilities, and certainly Ping, as this diagram shows, has those orchestration capabilities. So you have any user trying to connect to any asset, building identity, or identity being the steel thread of that digital customer journey, and being able to orchestrate that customer journey in an efficient way and minimize some of the challenges, minimize the internal friction, be able to support experimentation and drive engagement through innovative new capabilities. Orchestration is the key to creating those seamless experiences. Orchestration means never having to compromise between convenience and security. And if you can whiteboard it, you can orchestrate it. And so a couple of thoughts here in terms of what that really means: bringing internal teams together to collaborate, bringing teams together virtually or physically to create and visualize customer journeys, and facilitating that collaboration, using orchestration to take the friction, the internal friction, out of the collaboration process, so you don't put friction into the user journey. And it's really a win-win in terms of minimizing internal friction that could potentially result in end user friction. So again, if you can whiteboard it, you can orchestrate it. And so allow me to introduce you to Ping One DaVinci, really with the goal of, like I said, taking the friction out of building seamless, secure digital experiences. And first, I'll explain why we called it DaVinci, named after Leonardo da Vinci, of course. And he was part artist, part scientist, but really all genius. He was also ambidextrous. So the idea being there, we can bring convenience and security together without compromise. But a few other highlights of the service: simplifying the process of integrating identity systems and applications through hundreds of out-of-the-box integrations, reducing the time to market. So being able to leverage drag and drop to design automated workflows without custom code. And then A and B, rapid iteration to drive innovation. So being able to optimize and deploy user journeys with speed and efficiency, test A and B testing to test a couple different versions of a user journey and figure out which one is the most optimal, which one is going to ultimately drive the best customer engagement, and being able to do that with as simplified as possible and as quickly as possible. As we say, drag and drop the user journey into existence. So this is a no-code environment where your teams can build, test, and optimize identity journeys for your digital customer journey. Really, at the end of the day, you have your user who's trying to reach a digital outcome through your applications and services. And so be it the registration, passwordless account recovery, creating that unified profile to ultimately drive personalization through those customer identity flows. You can drag and drop any experience with any service on this one canvas. And like I said, do this with little or no code. And really, again, one of the key benefits here is minimizing the internal friction and preventing that internal friction, the ability to collaborate efficiently and effectively, making sure that internal friction doesn't wind up as end user customer facing friction. So that's the idea of the DaVinci orchestration service, and being able to, again, any service, any experience, any service, and doing that in a simple a way as possible. So your organization can leverage customer identity to create these seamless and secure customer journeys through a handful of ways that we see as outcomes. And so starting with frictionless registration and onboarding and login process, as I mentioned, boosting acquisition, reducing the potential for abandonment, being vigilant from an online fraud perspective to mitigate fraud, safe and simple account self-service to support the account recovery and reset process, leveraging self-service across every channel. So as you know, your customers brick and mortar or digital online, you know who that customer is. Getting support faster that helps solves the problem in as fast as way as possible. The service also being personalized to the person that is calling in, so that and solving the problem of not having to re-authenticate through that customer support journey. So those are some benefits. And last but not least, I think it's also important to ensure compliance with privacy regulations. Your customer's relationship with you will evolve over time, over the course of the relationship, and how their expectations for privacy will change as over the customer's lifetime. And so you need to honor their privacy and ultimately ensuring compliance with regulation. So again, the orchestration service allows you to build and secure customer journeys across all of these fronts. And all of this is required for a customer journey to make it smooth, frictionless, and secure. So in summary, DaVinci brings all of this together. Allows you to maintain control over the user experience. As I mentioned, hundreds of out-of-the-box integrations to build any experience that you want, leveraging any type of service, really. Reducing the time to market, so that no-code canvas to quickly build and deploy journeys allows you to stay ahead of your competition, keep your brand innovative, and again, drive that. The ability to do test different options, find out which one is optimal and going to have the best customer impact, optimize and experiment with different customer journeys, really with the goal of driving innovation, and then delight and protect your customers, which is ultimately the goal. So never compromise between security and convenience, and securing and honoring customer privacy that, again, delights and protect your customers. So that's the wrap up of, again, how we can leverage orchestration to take the friction out of the internal collaboration process, which ultimately creates frictionless and secure user experiences. As always, I encourage feedback and collaboration. So please let us know if you have any additional questions, and please don't hesitate to reach out to your Ping representatives or myself to learn more about Ping One DaVinci orchestration. Thank you and be well.
I love that, Aubrey, and thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. As always, really insightful, and I love hearing about DaVinci, not just the solution, but also I'm a bit of a history geek, so I always love in Aubrey's presentations. I get to learn a little bit something new about DaVinci, which is great. So I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. Again, we are going to keep things rolling right now, so we're not going to stop and chat with Aubrey, but we are going to make sure that any of the questions that you ask get to him and to the team. So you will be hearing back from Ping Identity if you asked a question today that we are not going to get to in a live Q&A session. I do also want to point out that I have the poll question up on the screen here for you. So again, we want to know what additional information you would like to get about the Ping Identity solution. So we just got all this wonderful information about the solution, about DaVinci as a human and DaVinci as an option for you. And this is a great way to kind of let them know, hey, this is the additional information. This is how I would like you to follow up with me. And then they can put that right directly into your hands. So it's easy, it's simple. Just click on that poll there. Wow, I sounded like a used car salesman right there, didn't I? It's easy and simple. Just click on the button. But do it, and it's a great way to make sure that you get the right information after we wrap today. Again, thank you to everyone who is submitting a question in these sessions. I love seeing those come in, so high fives to everybody out there for that. And as you're clicking on the poll here, I'm going to go ahead as a reward for all that awesomeness out there. Why don't we give away another $500 Amazon gift card? I think it's about time for that. So this $500 Amazon gift card is going to go to a lucky winner here live with us at the webinar, and this is Jack Evangelista of Georgia. Jack Evangelista of Georgia, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card, and as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap today. Now, don't forget, there's still one more chance to win a $500 Amazon gift card, plus the best question card from each of our sessions. So keep those questions coming in. Now, before we roll away, I do want to remind you all, if you haven't gone over and checked out the handouts tab, you can click on the rubric link and make sure to, or excuse me, the rubric link. I mean, click on the rubric link. Sure, that's great, but that's a different presentation. We're talking about Ping Identity right now, so you want to click on finding the right balance between security and customer experience. It is a very interesting read, lots of great information for you. So download that now, save that for later, because you're going to want to have that later on. But don't get lost in that right now, even though I know it's very interesting. Don't leave us just yet, because we have another exciting presentation lined up for you all. So I am very excited to introduce you all to our next presenter in today's EcoCast, Todd Doan, CIO Solution Architect. Whew, tongue twister there. CIO Solution Architect is here with us. Todd, thank you so much for being with us today. I can't wait to hear from you and what's up at CIO. So I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you.
Thank you, Jess. I'm happy to be a part of EcoCast. Again, I'm Todd Doan, a solutions architect at CIOS. I have over 2 decades of designing and implementing HA solutions. I spent most of my career working with U.S. companies in the financial sector, creating reference architectures and application-specific design patterns and principles. I have worked with mainframes, Windows, and Linux, all networking protocols and virtual environments in data centers, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and other cloud environments. CIOS has been in business for over 20 years. We were the 2021 Cloud Computing Product of the Year. We have partnerships with all leading cloud providers and software companies. For over 20 years, we have made high availability and disaster recovery easy, with over 80,000 licenses protecting essential applications and data worldwide. SIOS is available in Azure, AWS with the consumption-based model, or it is available as a permanent license. We are SAP certified for NetWeaver HA and SAP for HANA HA. With SIOS, you get an outstanding customer service. The Gold Stevie Award in 2022, an average of 7 years of HA support for our customer service team, 24/7, 365, worldwide coverage, and stringent and ongoing training and certifications. SIOS uniquely provides simplifying HA and DR with snap-in non-shared storage for Windows, simple clustering for Linux, application-specific intelligence that automates failover and recovery tasks, integration with cloud providers, and protection for all industries and company sizes. SIOS solves many challenges by reducing licensing costs, simplifying implementation, enabling Linux clustering, and reducing time and resources for all levels of IT management and operations. Companies have been hard at work looking to software infrastructure and solutions to minimize downtime, protect critical applications, and avoid data loss. Now, some companies come to us and say, hold on a second, we're moving our applications into the public cloud. So we have availability covered. And to some extent, this is true. But let's look at this point in a bit more detail. The cloud provider's position, their availability SLA is anywhere between 3 nines and 4 nines of availability, depending on how you have your instances deployed. Many companies get caught off guard by the fact that this SLA refers to the cloud instance only. It does not reference what is happening inside the instance with regards to our applications or our databases. At best, they're only offering 3 nines of availability across the application and database, and thus our availability SLA is only ever going to be as good as the weakest link in the environment, which is 3 nines or 99.9%. So we need to ask ourselves a couple questions. Is the SLA being offered by the cloud provider good enough for my high-tier applications? What are my options? So here at SIOS, we can step in and complement the availability SLAs by offering SLAs offered by the cloud providers. We improve the HA SLAs around applications and any associated databases to match what the cloud providers are offering at the instance level, 99.99%, which equates to approximately 52 minutes versus 525 minutes of unplanned downtime in a year. This raises the entire application environment availability up to that 4.9 levels, providing you with 10 times improvement on the HA/SLA coverage required for mission-critical applications. So if you're planning to move your applications to the public cloud or are already running your applications and databases on public cloud, it's worth taking a closer look at the actual HA/SLA being delivered compared against what is required. So let's take a closer look at the technology SIOS uses to achieve an application availability SLA of 4 nines. SIOS Data Keeper replicates the non-shared storage and presents it to Windows clustering as configurable clustered storage. SIOS adds application intelligence and allows flexibility in storage and server location. SIOS provides expert end-to-end guidance and support. The biggest benefit for SQL Server HA protection is up to 71% cost savings. SIOS Data Keeper Cluster Edition and support for a 2-node standless cluster with software assurance provides better protection and up to 71% savings over a 2-node SQL Server Enterprise Edition with always-on availability groups with software assurance. As you well know, in the financial sector, it is common to have multiple 16-plus core SQL servers supporting applications. With replication of those servers in multiple environments, dev, test, staging, production, and DR, the enterprise licensing costs for SQL Server can often prevent the appropriate RTO and RPO from being achieved. PayGo manages the largest energy company prepay programs in the US. They have all 4 of their current production systems in AWS using EC2 instances with additional production environments scheduled for rollout. They were challenged with protecting many terabytes of data that must be available 24/7. Always-on availability groups were not feasible. They turned to Sios DataKeeper for SQL Server on AWS to provide fast and efficient implementation with a significant overall cost reduction and provided high availability across availability zones. I will now provide a quick demo of Sios DataKeeper for Windows Cluster Edition.
So you may be familiar with traditional Windows Server failover cluster. It looks something like this, with 2 or more nodes connected to shared storage. Now, that shared storage can represent a single point of failure. It's also not widely available in the cloud, and if you want to deploy your clusters where cluster nodes reside in different data centers or different cloud availability zones, it's not possible to use shared storage. So if your shared storage fails, all the nodes in your cluster fail. So again, it's a single point of failure as well. At Sios, we have a product called DataKeeper. DataKeeper enables what we like to call SAMless clustering. Now, SAMless clustering is exactly the same as your traditional Windows Server failover cluster, but instead of using shared storage, we allow you to leverage locally attached storage. Again, this can be any storage device on a virtual machine, a cloud instance, or a physical server. Select a local attached block device, format it at NTFS, give it a drive letter, and then DataKeeper will do 2 things. 1, we'll do block level volume replication of that storage between the cluster nodes, and 2, present that storage to Windows failover clustering. We can do this replication synchronously for nodes in the same data center or same region in the cloud, or asynchronously for disaster recovery, different cloud regions, or longer distances. So pictured here is a simple 2-node cluster. As you might expect, if there's a failure on the primary node, failover clustering will detect that failure and initiate a recovery on a secondary node. Now, as part of that recovery, the mirror direction reverses. So now all the writes are occurring locally on node 2 and are automatically replicated back to node 1 without going into the DataKeeper software. That all just happens automatically. This is a typical 2-node cluster, but we also support multiple targets. So shown here would be 2 nodes locally, maybe doing synchronous replication for high availability. So if there's a failure local, it will recover locally, but then also continue to replicate out to a 3rd node for disaster recovery. Should you have the failover of an entire data center or an entire cloud region, you could have another copy of your data available in the disaster recovery site, and that node can either be part of the cluster to facilitate the automated recovery, or it can simply be a beta copy only, so that recovery on the DR node would be more of a manual process. And in the cloud, it would look something like this. It's really the same no matter what cloud you're deploying in. You typically have something called availability zones. So you're going to want to put your cluster nodes in different availability zones. And that gives you typically 4 nines of availability in terms of the SLA that the cloud provider will offer. But once you do that, it's configured exactly the same as your traditional on-premise cluster. Except again, you're leveraging the replication to replicate the data between the availability zones, so that if there's a failure on the primary server, the secondary server will come online automatically. We also support what we call hybrid storage multi-site cluster. So in this configuration, you might have a traditional shared storage cluster in your primary data center, and we allow you to take that existing cluster and replicate it off-site to a third node for disaster recovery. That could be your own disaster recovery site, or it could be a cloud instance in the hybrid cloud model. So again, if you have the local failure, you'll still have local failover. DataKeeper will take care of the disk locking locally while continuing to replicate the data out to the DR site for disaster recovery. So that if you have a failure of your entire data center, you can recover automatically or very quickly in your DR site. So let me jump over to a live Windows server and show you how this is put together. You might be familiar with Failover Cluster Manager. That's shown here. And as you can see, I have a 2-node cluster predefined with SQL 1 and SQL 2 as my cluster nodes. I don't have any roles defined yet. What I want to do first is create the basic cluster like you see here. We have the DataKeeper interface, which is just a local MMC snap-in that runs on either of the 2 cluster nodes or on your local workstation. Once you connect to the 2 servers in question, SQL 1 and SQL 2, the server overview report will give you a picture of what storage is available on these 2 servers. So you can see each server has a 10 gig F drive and a 100 gig G drive. Now, the only requirement for replication is if you want to replicate the F drive from SQL 1 to SQL 2, each node needs to have an F drive and it needs to be the same size. The real requirement is the target needs to be at least as big as the source. You can see here that we can replicate the F drive 10 gig. We can also replicate the G drive, which is 100 gig. First, we create what we call a job. It's a simple 3-step wizard. You give the job a name. We'll call this F drive, optional description. And so you will choose a source, SQL 1, choose the volume, F, and you can specify the network you want to use for replication. In our case, we only have a single network, so we'll use that network. Choose the target, SQL 2, F drive, same network, all that looks fine. Then finally, you have your options. These servers are in the same region or same data center. I would choose synchronous. Again, if I want to replicate greater distance, I would choose asynchronous. With asynchronous, you might also want to enable compression. There's 9 levels of compression. You also want to have the option to set the bandwidth throttle or maximum bandwidth. But for local targets and replication across availability zones in the same region of a cloud, synchronous is the way to go. So we'll click Done. Now that will initiate the replication. And in a moment, we'll also get a pop-up that asks us if we want to register this in the cluster. We'll say yes, go ahead and put that in the cluster. And we're going to jump back now to Failover Cluster Manager, and we look in storage, in available storage. Now we see this DataKeeper volume F. At this point, failover clustering treats that like it's a regular shared storage device, and it will support any cluster workload from SQL Server to file servers, to ERS, SCS, or whatever it might be. So in a future demo, I'll show you how to cluster a SQL Server. But let's say, just to give you an indication of how it works, I'm going to create just an empty role. It doesn't have any resources in it. If I go in to add storage to this role, you'll see that it recognizes the DataKeeper volume as an available storage type. Click OK, and now I have this DataKeeper volume F currently online on SQL 1. So anything I write on the F drive is being replicated from SQL 1 to SQL 2. And if I want to move this to SQL 2, I can do that through Failover Cluster Manager, and things will start moving over to SQL 2. So the F drive you see is now online on SQL 2. In a moment, my job will refresh to show me that SQL 2 is now the source. So now we see the source SQL Server SQL 2, the target is SQL 1. So again, all that happened automatically. I didn't have to come out here to DataKeeper to make that happen. If we wanted to move it back again, I would simply move it back. Same thing would happen with unexpected failure. So if an active node had a failure, failover clustering would detect that and would initiate a recovery, and DataKeeper just obeys with whatever the failover clustering is telling it to do. So we can come back online on SQL 1, and DataKeeper will refresh, and we'll see now that the F drive is once again the source on SQL 1, and the target is SQL 2. So that's it for my presentation. Before we get to questions, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. And now, Jess, I think there may be some questions, and if we have a few minutes available to address them live or through chat.
Yes, we definitely have some questions coming in. We are, sorry, we got a little bit of a sound loop there. Hi. always weird when we do transitions in live. You know, you get some fun little sound loops and visual loops and glitches in the matrix as per usual. But here we are, Todd. Thanks for joining us and for an awesome presentation. I do want to point out before Todd and I jump into some Q&A here that we put that link up on the screen for you here. So that's where you want to go check out. So head on over to us.sios.com and get a little bit more information after we wrap today. I'm also now going to, so grab that link if you haven't already. Get it, and gone. All right, now we've got that poll up for you because we want to get an idea from you. If you are looking at, I see Joseph here saying, yeah, this is the fun of live. I agree with you. All right, if you are looking for a little more additional information from SIOS, this is the information, the way to get that information. So you can click on the poll right now and let SIOS know how they can follow up with you. Data sheets, technical white papers, case studies, demos, whatever it is you're looking for, they've got it, and they'll put it right in your email inbox. So you don't even have to do anything. So make your life easy. Click on that poll right now and let SIOS send you the information that you need. Now, Todd, all of that being said, you ready to jump into some Q&A?
I am. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's get started here because we've got a lot of good questions I want to make sure we can get to. So I want to start with this one here from Ambrose. Wondering about clustering with both Linux and Windows. Is that possible with SIOS?
So it's possible to cluster Linux to Linux and Windows to Windows, but it is not possible to cluster between different operating systems. And with the clustering that we provide for Linux, again, it's very easy failover, and we monitor the applications, the database, everything, so that you get true HA at the application level.
Okay, so on that note, we did get a question about clustering with hybrid environments.
Yes, we can absolutely cluster to hybrid environments. A lot of our customers, will set up the cloud type or the cloud servers as like DR servers and do asynchronous replication, and then actually use it as a migration path to go from a private data center into the cloud. Others leave it that way. Others have the cloud primary, and then the local data center would be the DR site. So really, we're flexible. We just do block level data replication. And again, depending on the speed of the links and stuff, we support both synchronous and asynchronous. Typically, it's asynchronous when you're dealing with large distances.
Interesting. Okay, so you actually just touched on a question that we had in here about that. And so just to clarify, they had sort of two parts to it. So you answered the synchronous, asynchronous. So is that going to work for, a situation where an organization has different data centers, maybe all across the U.S.?
Yes, absolutely. And again, if the latency is low enough, we support synchronous replication. And you can even do it with higher latency, but it may slow down the performance of the primary drive that you're writing to make sure that, we have to make sure that the data is replicated before we'll release the drive for more writing. So, not the best idea if you've got high latency to try to run synchronous. But we support synchronous and asynchronous. So again, when the latency gets higher, distances get larger, we strongly recommend that go asynchronous. But synchronous works great within between availability zones in most cloud providers, but between regions we typically do asynchronous.
Okay, so you were just mentioning cloud providers. We have a question here if Sios is going to support both hardware and VM-based models.
Absolutely. We've been in business for over 20 years. We started out with just hardware. There wasn't, any VMware available initially. But we also support all the VMware environments, or VM environments, VMware hypervisor, anything that you can provide. We again just do block level replication of the entire drive or data source.
Perfect. Okay. A question about disaster recovery, obviously top of mind for a lot of folks out there. Ambrose here is wondering if there's any geographical location limitation that he should be aware of or that the organization should be aware of. For example, can we do replication for one server inside the U.S. and the other outside the U.S.?
Yeah, we can absolutely do that with asynchronous replication. If you're doing huge amounts of continuous data writes, you just need to make sure that you have plenty of storage space available so that you don't overrun the queue that's going to serve the replication to that remote site. So if you have tons of latency and a slow link, you just need to have a lot of space available to give it time to write to that async. Because once the queue's full, then there can be some issues. But typically, that's not a problem. The latency really doesn't have that big of an effect on asynchronous replication because there's typically, even though the latency may be high, there's plenty of bandwidth to be able to back up to the DR location.
Okay. This is an interesting question here, and I always appreciate when someone asks, especially because we've got a lot of folks out there that are sorting through various different vendors. So Deb is wondering if you could give a little clarity on what you think makes Sios stand out. What's kind of a key, unique, or differentiator for you?
So there's really three key differentiators. The first is cost, especially with SQL Server, being able to use standard edition, get high availability, and not have to use the shared storage model where you get the single point of failure. So that's one of the biggest differentiators, was that we can, and we sync the whole entire drive, not just the database. So if you're storing your database configuration and stuff, all of that stays in sync, not just the database itself. The next big differentiator is for Linux clustering. We offer very, very easily configurable clustering in a Linux environment. Most Linux clustering, the freely available stuff is extremely difficult to configure. The failovers aren't automatic. Failbacks are difficult to control. So we offer a very simple solution. And then, last is the application level reliability that we provide in both Linux and Windows for things like, SAP, Oracle databases, SQL databases. We're monitoring at the application level and providing HA at the application level, which, the cloud itself doesn't provide.
Perfect. Love that. Okay. So do you feel that, we did get a question here about, what is the gap that Sios is sort of plugging in the market? Do you feel like that is sort of the answer to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's Linux clustering, if you want it to be easy, Sios is the solution. That's the gap we fill. And in the cloud, again, it's that application level, database level, high availability that we provide.
Well, I think that's a good gap to be filling, and certainly anything that makes life easier is always key. I think we'll have to wrap it up there, even though I have to say, Todd, I think, the audience is really engaged and lots of great questions coming in, so I am going to make sure that those get to your team. You're also welcome to hang out if you've got a little time to kind of go through some of them on live chat. But before you take off, Todd, for anyone out there that is really excited to get started, we put that link up at the start, kind of reminding people where to head. Is that the first step, or what would you recommend to kind of get rolling here with Sios?
Yeah, go ahead and, again, check out our website. If you've got questions, feel free to give us a call. We have, trial licenses. We do proof of concepts. We're available in AWS Marketplace and Azure, so you can do a trial with the consumption-based model, or again, like I said, we've got evaluation licenses and trials available for your proof of concept, and we'd love to help you any way we can.
Sounds great. Okay, well, Todd, thank you so much again for being here with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who filled out that poll. Again, that's helpful feedback for us to have to kind of see where you are all at and what information is good for you in your research phases. Also really helpful for Sios, so they can make sure that they're sending you the information that you need that's going to help you make whatever decisions or pitches or internal arguments that you need to make to all of your team in order to kind of pursue some of these solutions. So take a second now if you haven't already and click on that poll. I also want to encourage you to head on over to the Handouts tab and be sure to click into the Sios link and grab that handout for later, because it is really going to be useful information for you. It's I think, again, and I'll keep saying this, we get a lot of really good insight in these live events here and live webinars and learn a lot and take in a lot, and there's just only so much that our brains can retain. So, when I say click on the poll, open the handouts, download them, save them for later, I hope that you're all doing that, because that is going to be the takeaway. That is going to be the thing that you can look back at later and jog those neural pathways and revisit some of this information. So do take a little time to explore. While you're doing that, I think it's about time that we move along because we have another wonderful presentation lined up for you all here. And I can't believe this, folks. I have to say, this has just been such a fun conversation, lots of really interesting and engaging questions coming in. And now here we are already at our very last presentation of the day. I don't know how the time flies so quickly, but luckily we are ending on a bang. We've got a great grand finale for you all. I know that you're all really going to enjoy this last presentation. We're hearing from Sneak. So we have Ashish Rajan, Principal Cloud Security Advocate at Sneak, here with us. Ashish, thank you so much for being here to wrap things up for us today. The platform is all yours.
I hope you're having a great time at the event and learning a lot of new things. Today I'm talking about blind sides of cloud security audit. As part of this topic, I'll cover a few things. I'll talk about the cloud as a topic itself, primarily focusing on Amazon Web Services because they are the biggest cloud, but also because as much as we have had experience in data centers of the financial world, it is very different when you're trying to create a fintech company or work with as a fintech company in the cloud space. We'll also talk about shared responsibility, how that has changed, and the known unknowns in the space as well, and a lot more. So let's get into it. Before I talk about the topic itself, I just want to give a brief introduction to who I am. My name is Ashish, as you would have kind of seen from the topic over there, but The other things you might not know about me is I run a podcast called Cloud Security Podcast, which is a video as well as an audio platform, so available everywhere. We talk about cloud all day, every day on the channel. And we also interview all professionals from all walks of life. So we have had people from Netflix, Twilio, LinkedIn, a lot more people come in and talk about how they do cloud security, folks from Robinhood and others. If this is of interest to you, definitely check that out. Before that, I used to be a CISO. Yes, I did the CISO part, and I have moved on to become a media person now. And I have been in this cloud space for the past 7 years and in cybersecurity for the past 14. Outside of me talking about cybersecurity and cloud security, I also enjoy talking about coffee and men's fashion as well, if you can't tell. Getting into the topic, shared responsibility. Now, every time I mention this, a lot of people have the same reaction they would have when they are listening to the flight attendant in a flight talking about the safety procedure. It is the same thing where it is important for you to hear it because it keeps changing. And in dynamics of the cloud world, it is even more important for you to understand how this thing applies to you and your organization. There are a few aspects to shared responsibility that have evolved with the data center and the cloud world. The first one being, now you have a new third party who's also sharing responsibility with you, and a third party that is probably the core of your business, depending on which organization you work for and how much of a cloud footprint you have. But they could also be the reason for why you get hacked. For people who remember the example of Capital One, where a rogue AWS employee took over data from Capital One, exposed it. They were eventually caught, but God only knows how many are not being caught on a day-to-day basis. So not that I want to keep any kind of fear on people, but just to calling out as a security person or as a financial authority who is responsible for customers, day-to-day customers, and have to deal with money and have a lot of attention on themselves. I think it's important to understand the shared responsibility has to be clearly defined in the organization for with what the responsibility of the cloud service provider is and what is our responsibility as a bank or a fintech company that is working in this, or even a financial service organization or an agency. Now, going into a bit more technical, the computational power that we used to deal with in a data center was usually called servers, and that's pretty much what it landed on. In the cloud world, now you have containers, Kubernetes, serverless, and a lot more things that go into it. And if you want to go even further, there's private cloud, public cloud, and there are SaaS providers as well. And you can even look at this possibility of having some kind of a, well, let's just say open source code that has been made available as a product from your cloud service provider, which brings me to the next point. As an organization, there's a stat that came out. About 75% of the code written by most organizations is using open source, which means someone else is writing the code that you are running $1 million or $1 billion business on, which is quite scary. And having that understanding that you're exposing yourself even further into this space is a lot more scary than one would imagine. And architecture itself has changed. Now, people who are in the audience who may be technical architects or security architects or solution architects, the way we have designed banks or the financial institutions has been through a reformed framework process and how that would work. That is based on a traditional architecture, which used to work in the data center world. Now, a lot of the organizations are going through and becoming more event-based architecture. There's usually, you may have ServiceNow or similar products for your cab management, but that also is changing because that is too slow for the world of cloud. Which brings me to the next point. The reason we had cabs services like ServiceNow and others was just to have some kind of a centralized management. And the reason we had centralized management was because we wanted to go through have some compliance regulation or possibilities that we need to understand. Now, keeping all this in mind, as you can imagine, shared responsibility over here is we are not only just responsible for the data that we manage, the service we create, but we're sharing a huge portion of that with a lot of third parties. Some of them, like your cloud service provider, are known third parties that you can see, face, have a contract with. Some of them are unknown third parties, like your open source code writers. For people who are curious about how bad this can get, I would definitely encourage you to check out Protestware, which is definitely something a lot of people found that it is something that is becoming a growing problem in the open source space, and supply chain has become even more important thanks to all of this. Let's talk about compliance as it has traditionally been done in financial institutions. We already have a standard that we know that we have to adhere to. Whatever the type of financial service that you provide, you can have SOX, PCI, ISO 27001, FINRA, and a lot more. So we know how to do that. We have a checklist for it in most organizations for what the process should be and what kind of things should be ticked off as we kind of go down that path. But the other one we don't talk about is also supply chain, which can further evolve. And now we have a lot more process around it. Like after the presidential order came in, a lot of people, organizations have started considering zero trust in there as well. So supply chain and the expectation for what supply chain should be, third parties. A great example for this was Log4j when that came out. A lot of people understood the value of third party and how they should manage them ongoingly, especially open source third party as well that you're dealing with. So that was really interesting. And we have been doing that quite, I'll just say we have been doing a comfortable job with it. At least we are at a point where we have a comfortable risk posture for it. Now, there are cloud security standards that we can also refer to, which can also help you with the compliance part of a thing. But with the organizations that you might have, one of the things that you might have already looked at or might be looking at already, that if you have an information security policy that you have in the organization, you may be looking at having ways of mapping that to what it may look like in cloud. And extensive security assurance is always around the corner. So whether it's pen test or your audit activity, we have pretty much nailed down the compliance as it was in the traditional world. There are a lot of compliance that have been announced by folks who are doing this in the cloud world as well. These are some of the examples like NASDAQ, Dow Jones, but I've got a whole link of it on the AWS testimonial side. You can go in and look for finance sector, and you can see a lot of people in the finance sector have already been running compliant resources in AWS and other cloud providers as well. So it is possible to do this in cloud, but I want to highlight the gaps as well in where we have a gap in all of this. The first one being that because we don't have a cap system, a lot of organizations don't have a set inventory. Most scenarios are usually covered from an audit perspective, but having a current inventory is very volatile. The reason this is volatile is because unlike our data center, the compute service like a server can go up and down in a matter of minutes. Whereas in a traditional data center, it would remain there for years, months, weeks, depending on how long the project is running for or how long the service is required for. In the cloud world, a lot of organizations are doing scaling up and down or scaling left to right, depending on the demand for the service so that they can be more economical when they're trying to run their build or run a ship in AWS or any cloud provider out there. Another gap that has also been identified is just in terms of data, the kind of data that's being classified and what kind of data should be put into cloud and should not be put into cloud. There hasn't really been a clear boundary set for that. A lot of organizations started off by doing some experimental projects in cloud, and it kind of moved on to a bit more graduation scale, where you started doing a lot more projects, but security was not involved in some cases, which meant a lot of potential data that may or may not should have, or should not have gone into cloud is already in cloud. So something to be wary of. A lot of times, a lot of critical resources are missed as well. And the evolving world of AWS, and for folks who are probably attending the AWS reInvent 2022, would have realized that there's a lot of updates that come in and a lot of changes to keep up with. So the compliance gap is widening, not because we don't want to do a great job, but just by the nature of the fact that we are in a world where constantly changing and very frequently getting updates and new things that keep coming up. And as not just security people, but everyone in general is trying to keep up with the new things that keep coming in cloud, because everyone out there is all about speed. And that's kind of where most of the gaps are coming from. There are some cloud native options that you can look at. Like, for example, AWS has AWS Artifact, AWS Trusted Advisor. Now, I'm going to go through them very briefly, but I'll definitely encourage you to check them out. Why cloud native is a thing I'll talk about in a following slide, but I just want to call out the fact that the one way to tackle the gaps is to use cloud native to your advantage. And by cloud native, I mean services that are provided by Amazon themselves. So some of the examples being AWS Artifact, Trusted Advisor, IAM Analyzer, Organization SCPs, which is the same as applying your information security policy in all your AWS accounts in the environment. Things like AWS Config, there's a lot more like AWS Security Hub, AWS Guard Duty. I can keep going on, but definitely check that out as a way for you to have some control of native services that you can use for your advantage in your organization. Now, let's talk about the known unknowns. Now, from the best example to use over here is I start with identity. Traditionally, we have known that Ashish is an identity, that is a server. But there is no relationship between Ashish and the server until Ashish logs into the server and does something. In the cloud world, that resource or the server has an identity as well. It's not just Ashish, but the server has an identity. The server has a permission to. I could be running something right now without even knowing that there is something running in my organization. Like that's a known unknown a lot of people don't understand. So when a lot of people do user audits on a frequent basis, they look at Ashish as the identity, but they don't look at the server as an identity, which is potentially rogue and doing a lot of things which may be malicious or in general should not have been there in the first place. So things like that are a known unknown. A lot of people are also unaware that they may already be breaching compliance without even knowing it. A lot of us are required to work within a geographical boundary because of the data that we deal with. Like you would not want an American citizen's data to be outside of America unless there is a need for it and there is consent from it for multiple people. The same goes for banks that are in Australia, banks that are in UK or anywhere in the world. There are certain regulatory things that you have to comply with to remain within that boundary. And as much as I would like to say it, but not all services are available in all regions. And if you have applications running on services that are not in the region that they should be, and your application is using it, technically you are in breach of compliance. So if you don't take anything from this conversation, I would definitely encourage you to check the services that are currently in use in your AWS environment, if you are in there, or in Azure or GCP or whichever cloud environment you're in, and make sure that they are in the region that you need to be working in. And again, you can use cloud native services to make sure that you restrict people to only use services in that region as well. Another reason why another thing that people have a lot of unknowns about is there is no direct one-to-one mapping for all your information security policies into the cloud world. So they need to be transformed. You almost have to, I wouldn't say throw away the playbook, but you definitely need to redefine what the playbook is for the cloud world. And sometimes you can take some of the learnings from what your on-premise was, and you can move to cloud as well. But sometimes you just have to, just rewrite the whole thing again. Incident response is another thing that a lot of people don't talk about in the cloud space. Have you considered a scenario where your cloud service provider has a vulnerability and it is exposed and you have to make a change? If you're thinking, hey, I haven't heard of a vulnerability from Amazon, Azure, or Google Cloud before, let me enlighten you. The reality is, over the past 2 years, there have been vulnerabilities announced for all three major cloud service providers like AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. And a lot of those fixes require you to log in or someone from your team to log in and do make changes. So if they don't make those changes, you're still technically vulnerable to old vulnerabilities. So I can leave a link for the vulnerability report that I've been keeping a collection of what are the vulnerabilities in a GitHub repository. I'll leave a link on the QR code towards the end. So folks can definitely go in and have a look at what the reports have been announced so far and what you should be looking out for, especially. So point being, incident response should also include scenarios for cloud service providers as well now. But I don't know how many people are doing it. Which brings me to a maturity model. I know I've been talking about why shared responsibility is important. I've also been talking about what are the known unknowns, the compliance gaps, but there is a maturity model that you can follow, which has been, at least from the conversation that I've had across the past 7 years between different organizations, all of different size, you can have a roadmap towards where are you right now and where you can get you. Now, this is a non-technical roadmap. I didn't want to bring a technical roadmap to here although there's a version for that with me as well. But during some of the consulting practices that I've had conversations with, I've always spoken about sometimes it's more than the tool, it's the people and the process. And in most scenarios, when you find that there has been a breach or there has been something which should not have happened, is usually because there's a lack of process. So I wanted to focus this conversation, at least this particular one, on this basic slide that we have over here. The first one being, most people when they start in cloud, and some of you may already be in cloud, some of you may not be in cloud, but all of you would relate to this, that usually it's a DevOps team that is trying to build cloud as a proof of concept. We want to see whether this can work for us or not. The next concept after that is, hey, how about we go around doing this in a way that it actually works for us, which is start doing applications which are not so critical, but critical enough that you can show as an example to a business unit and say, hey, look at this. We could deploy this application so quickly into the organization, so you should come and work with us. As you kind of mature, so security is also trying to mature with you. So the first thing that would security come up with is we should do identity and federation. So at least all the users are accounted for. Again, the gap that I mentioned earlier, which sometimes get missed, is the fact that your resources also have identity. So that is not covered under federated identity, but hey, I will let you be the judge for, you may be covering both sides of it. Now, once enough applications have been done as a proof of concept and built around business unit, now people are a lot more braver and they want to start doing business critical applications on the cloud. Now, security has to be really involved. And now we're thinking about critical workload. That means we have to think about compliance standards. What kind of readiness should we have? What kind of work should we be looking at? A lot of things have to be considered by security at this point in time. And a lot of people at this point in time would think about mapping an information security policy to the cloud and think about what kind of guardrails should they implement in the cloud space in the first place. As you kind of mature, your security team as well as DevOps team is becoming a lot more friendlier with the cloud space and our understanding of what they should be doing. And the ultimate maturity stage is to be able to have some kind of automated provisioning with guardrails on your cloud so people don't make mistakes on any of the new accounts. And if you have had any slip-ups where on any of the cloud environments just basically were created non-compliant, you're able to bring them to compliance standard. That's a lot of the work in the maturity from a non-technical and capability perspective. But as you can imagine, as you kind of build this, there is a technical capability you have to bring forward as well. Now, I do want to call out some of the changes that people don't talk about in the world of cybersecurity or cloud security. Some of you would have seen the Uber breach that happened in September 2022. A lot of talk was around the data that was breached, but not a lot of focus was given on the fact that the hacker also had access to the AWS console, which, as you hear that, you probably would understand what that would mean is if I have access to, and if I was a rogue person and I have access to your AWS account, I potentially have access to your secret projects that you're trying to have you launch so that you can have competitive edge on over your competitor. It could be a production environment, which I could switch off and delete completely. So you may stop existing as a company. There's a lot more scenarios that can go wrong over there. So the breaches have evolved quite a bit. Another thing has also evolved is the whole phishing scams that used to be a case where, oh, it's my username, password, or it's my AD credential. Now, if you're mostly Office 365, for people who remember when Queen Elizabeth passed away, there was a scam going on about the fact that you can leave a message for Queen Elizabeth as this online forum thing, and it was an Office 365 credential page. Now you realize that Office 365 means you potentially are giving people access to your Azure environment as well. So that's something to be wary of. The last one being guardrails are for people who have a fascination for F1 and cars. Brakes were created so that you could go faster, not so that you can slow down. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover on this talk here. If you have more questions about cloud security, feel free to scan the QR code. And we talk about cloud security every day, all day. Feel free to reach out, and huge shout out to Sneak as well, where I work as a principal cloud security advocate. If you want to check us out as well, head to the sneak.io website, and we'll be happy to have more conversation with you. Thank you for attending the talk. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ashish, for that awesome presentation. I have to say, as an F1 fan myself, I loved that quote at the end. I think that was, a really cool. I hadn't thought about that way. The brakes being designed to allow us to go faster. That's a great point, great analogy, solid reference, and an all-around wonderful presentation. So thank you so much for that, and for being here to wrap us all up today and giving us such a wonderful grand finale. Now, you can all see that I have put up a poll question for you all. Again, we'd love to know, what additional information you would like to get from Sneak. What is the follow-up that you would like to get? There's a lot of great options for you here. So make your life a little bit easier down the line, jog that memory, make sure that you click on those options and let Sneak know how they can follow up with you after we wrap the webinar today. Now, speaking of which, I do want to also remind you to click on the handouts tab. So if you head on over to that handouts tab and snag that Sneak cheat sheet, AWS security misconfigurations and how to fix them. A very interesting read, so be sure to download that and save that for later. Well, that's about all the time that we have here on the EcoCast today. So to wrap it all up, I think we'll give away our very last prize of the day. So this is our third and final $500 Amazon gift card, and a reminder that you do need to be here present live at the EcoCast in order to win. So this $500 Amazon gift card is going to go to Susan Stagman of Iowa. Susan Stagman of Iowa, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. And congrats to all our lucky winners here today. I'm going to review that list for you one more time. So we have Neil Gomez of New Jersey, Jacques Evangelista of Georgia, and Susan Stagman of Iowa, all winning $500 Amazon gift cards. And don't forget that we will be following up with that best question asked. So if you asked a question today, even if we didn't get to it in a live session, there is still a chance that you will win that gift card. So stay tuned for that. Now, if you are in the webinar today and you would like to chat with us about presenting on a future summit, an EcoCast, a MegaCast, a webinar, we would absolutely love to talk to you. Scott, David, myself, we're all happy to have a conversation, to get to know you a little bit better. And we would love for you to be a part of one of these wonderful webinars. Again, EcoCast, MegaCast, summits, webinars, there's all kinds of options for you. So if you thought that today was fun and you want to be a part of it, well, I agree. It is fun. So reach out over connect@actualtechmedia.com and get in touch, and we'll get that conversation started. Well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our speakers here today from Zerto, from Rubrik, Ping Identity, Sios, and from Sneak, and for making this EcoCast possible. A very special thank you to all of you out there for attending, for asking some great questions. I really had so much fun with you all today, talking and exploring some really exciting solutions. And when you ask those questions and really get engaged in the conversation and the topics that we're exploring, the speakers see those coming in, they get more excited. It just brings up the whole energy and flow of our webinar. So it really does make a difference. So thank you to all of you for taking so much time to participate and to engage with these topics today. I hope that you've all learned some interesting and helpful tips about supporting, maybe improving or securing your finance, IT, and cloud environments. Now, before you take off, speaking of cloud, I want to make sure that you mark your calendars and come back and join us on Thursday, December 1st. Woof, that is this Thursday. It is already December, this Thursday, December 1st, because we're going to be chatting about all things cloud. So tools, products, and services critical to cloud success. It's going to be a really interesting conversation. David Davis will be here to help us with that. Ned in the Cloud, Ned Bellavance will be here. So just a really, really fun day. Be sure to register. That's again, this coming up Thursday, December 1st at 12 p.m. Eastern. And join us for that exciting MegaCast. Well, I hope that I will see you all there or at another webinar again soon. And until then, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day.